Bintam Whale arrived in the quiet, green hills of Makon Valley with a hopeful heart. Every year, the whole family gathered at their childhood home, and even though things were never perfect, she always wished this time would be different. She was only 24, but she carried more responsibility than anyone gave her credit for. The moment she stepped out of the car, her siblings, Tendo and Samira, exchanged looks and smirks. "Look who finally arrived," Tendo said loudly. "Mom's favorite is here." Samira rolled her eyes. "Of course she is. She probably wants to make sure she gets everything when Mom dies." Their laughter was sharp, like a knife meant to cut her. Binta forced a smile and hugged them anyway, pretending the comments didn't hurt. She didn't want to start the weekend with arguments. She kept reminding herself that she came for her mother, not for them. Mama Kasai sat on the porch, wrapped in a warm shawl. She looked tired, but her eyes were still bright with love when she saw Binta. "My child," she said softly, opening her arms. Binta held her tightly, feeling how fragile she had become. It scared her more than she wanted to admit. Inside the house, the atmosphere felt strange. Too tense, too quiet. Even the walls felt like they were watching something unfold. Binta tried to relax, helping in the kitchen, setting the table, doing anything to distract herself. But every time she walked past her siblings, she could feel their eyes on her, judging, whispering, waiting. She didn't know why they always blamed her for being the favorite. They never saw the late nights she spent caring for their mother. They never came when Mama Kasai called. They never sacrificed anything. Binta had no idea that this weekend, beneath all the laughter and fake smiles, something darker was brewing, something that would shatter everything she believed about family. The betrayal was closer than she thought, and it was already waiting for her. Dinner that night felt more like a stage than a family meal. Everyone sat around the long wooden table, plates full, conversations loud, and yet Binta felt strangely small in the middle of it all. She tried to focus on Mama Kasai, who smiled weakly but looked happy to have her children home. For a moment, Binta let herself breathe. Maybe things would stay peaceful. But peace never lasted long with her siblings. Tendo suddenly lifted his glass and smirked. "Let's be honest," he said loudly, making sure everyone heard. "Binta doesn't have to worry about anything. She's the one who'll inherit everything anyway." Few people chuckled politely, but Samira didn't stop there. She leaned back, crossed her arms, and added with a bitter laugh, "Please. Binta couldn't survive 5 minutes alone. She's too soft, too emotional. She needs everything handed to her." This time the laughter was louder. Cousins, uncles, even people who barely knew her joined in just to belong. Schlaf felt like a slap. Binta kept her smile glued to her face even though her throat was tight and her eyes burned. She refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. She pushed her food around the plate, pretending not to hear the whispers that followed. Favorite. Protected. Lucky girl. They had no idea how hard she worked, how many nights she stayed up taking care of their mother, how much she gave up. But explaining herself felt useless. They never wanted the truth, they only wanted someone to blame. When she couldn't take it anymore, Binta quietly stood up. "I'll just get some air," she said with a shaky smile. She walked down the hallway as calmly as she could, but the moment she reached her old bedroom, the tears she'd been fighting finally appeared. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the familiar walls, trying to steady her breath. It hurt, more than she wanted to admit. Being called soft wasn't new, but tonight it felt cruel, intentional. She wiped her eyes and stood up, telling herself to stay strong. But as she moved toward the door, something stopped her. The sound of faint voices drifting up from the living room downstairs. She froze. The tone was low, sharp, secretive. She stepped quietly into the hallway and leaned over the railing just enough to hear. Tendo's voice, angry and cold, cut through the silence. "She thinks she's safe because Mom loves her." Samira hissed back. "That's why we need to act fast." Binta's heart thudded painfully. Fast? About what? She held her breath as they continued. "You know Mom won't last long," Tendo whispered. "We need to fix the documents before she dies. Binta can't get everything." Samira scoffed. "She doesn't deserve anything. She thinks she's better than us." Binta felt the floor beneath her tilt. This wasn't teasing. This wasn't jealousy. This was a plan. A real ugly plan. Her name kept getting repeated, with disgust, bitterness, and hate she never imagined her own siblings could feel. She pressed a hand to her mouth, eyes wide, her heart breaking as she realized the truth. They weren't just mocking her anymore. They were plotting against her. And the night was only just beginning. Binta pressed her back against the cold hallway wall, her breath shallow and her hands trembling. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop. She had only gone upstairs to escape the humiliation at dinner. But now she was hearing words that made her entire body go numb. The voices downstairs grew clearer as she inched closer to the slightly open door, her heart pounding so loudly she feared they might hear it. Tendo sounded impatient, almost angry. "We don't have much time. Mom's properties, the bank accounts, the farmland titles. All of it needs to be sorted tonight." Samira sighed sharply. "Exactly. If we wait, Binta will get everything. She always does. Mom trusts her too much." Binta covered her mouth, trying not to gasp. They were talking openly about her mother's assets, things she never even cared about. She only worried about her mother's health, not money. But hearing her siblings talk like vultures circling their prey made her stomach twist. Tendo's voice dropped even lower. "So we'll change the documents. Adjust the signatures. It's easy. Mom is weak, she won't even notice." Samira laughed under her breath. "We'll make sure Binta gets nothing. She thinks staying here makes her special. She doesn't deserve a shilling." The word nothing echoed in Binta's ears like a slap. She felt her knees weaken and she crouched down, leaning against the wall just to steady herself. She remembered every day she had spent taking care of Mama Kesai, the medications, the doctor visits, the meals, the sleepless nights. She had done all of it with love, never expecting anything back. And now her own siblings were making her sound like a greedy stranger. Samira's voice turned cold. "We'll push Mom to sign everything tonight, before she dies." Those last 3 words hit Binta like a punch to the chest. Before she dies. Their mother was sick, yes, but she was alive, breathing, talking, smiling. And yet her children were already planning her death like it was an appointment on their schedule. Tears filled Binta's eyes. She felt anger, confusion, heartbreak, and disbelief all at once. How could her own family think this way? How could they be so cruel, so greedy, so shameless? Tendo sighed. "We just have to make her sign, even if she's tired. We'll tell her it's urgent." Samira agreed instantly. "She won't say no to us. And then Binta will finally know her place." Binta swallowed a sob. Her place. What place? She had given up her job, her city life, her dreams, all to take care of the same woman they were trying to manipulate. She didn't think her siblings could hate her this much. She didn't think they could stoop so low. She backed away from the door carefully, her whole body shaking. It felt like the world she knew was collapsing right under her feet. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a wound from the people she trusted since childhood. Her siblings weren't just planning to steal the inheritance. They were planning to erase her completely. And they wanted to do it while their mother was still alive and unaware. Binta wiped her tears, but they kept falling. She knew one thing. After tonight, nothing in this family would ever be the same again. Binta stumbled back into her room, her hands shaking so hard she had to grip the edge of the dresser just to steady herself. Her chest felt tight, her throat felt blocked, and her mind was spinning with the words she had just heard. Her own siblings, the same people she grew up with, shared food with, played with, were plotting to steal everything behind her back. Not after their mother passed, but while she was still alive. She sank onto the bed and covered her face. For a moment, she let the tears fall freely. Hurt too much. The betrayal felt sharp and deep, like someone had reached into her chest and twisted something that was never meant to be touched. As she cried, memories started flooding her mind, memories that made everything even more painful. She remembered the day she got the job offer in Dar es Salaam. It was her dream job, the one she had worked for during college. She had cried with joy when she received the email. But just weeks later, Mama Kesai fell ill. Doctors warned them she needed constant care. Tendo said he was too busy with work. Samira said she lived too far. So without hesitation, Binta packed her life into 2 small suitcases, resigned from the job she had barely started, and moved back home. She remembered the night she sat beside her mother, wiping sweat from her forehead, helping her drink soup and whispering, "I'm here, Mama. I'm not going anywhere." She remembered calling Tendo and Samira, asking for help and hearing excuses every time. And now those same people were calling her Mom's favorite, not because they believed it, but because it gave them someone to target, someone to blame, someone to steal from. They didn't call her favorite because of love. They called her favorite because of greed. Binta wiped her tears roughly. A different kind of feeling was rising inside her now, something hotter, stronger, sharper than the pain. It was anger, but not the wild kind. It was controlled, focused, fire. She sat up straighter, her breath steadying. "No," she whispered to herself. "I won't let them do this to her. I won't let them do this to me." Her siblings thought she was soft. They thought she was emotional. They thought she would cry quietly while they stole everything. They didn't know she had listened. They didn't know she had proof. They didn't know she had spent years learning about property laws, bank procedures, and legal rights while managing her mother's affairs. They didn't know she wasn't weak, she was informed, and she wasn't going to fight them with tears or shouting. That's what they expected. That's what they were prepared for. Instead, she would fight them with knowledge, with logic, with truth, the kind of truth that couldn't be twisted or denied. Her heart was still hurting, but now there was something else burning beside the pain, a quiet, fierce determination. She picked up her phone and checked the recording she had accidentally captured earlier when she left the dinner table. Clear voices, clear plans, clear betrayal. Binta exhaled slowly, her eyes sharpening. They wanted a fight. They were going to get one, but not the kind they expected. Tonight, the girl they mocked would become the woman they feared. The next morning the house felt too quiet, almost heavy. Sunlight came through the curtains, but it didn't bring any warmth to Binta. She barely slept. Her mind kept replaying her siblings' words, their cold voices, their plans. As soon as she heard her mother moving around in her room, she knew she couldn't keep the truth hidden any longer. She knocked softly. "Mama, can we talk?" Mama Kasai looked up from her bed, her eyes tired but gentle. "Come in, my child." The moment Binta sat beside her, her eyes filled with tears again. Mama gently held her hand, sensing something was wrong. "Mama," Binta whispered, "I heard Tendo and Samira talking last night. They want you to sign everything over to them. They want to change documents and leave me with nothing." Her voice cracked. "They're doing it while you're still alive." Mama Kasai closed her eyes, not in shock but in sadness. A deep, quiet sadness Binta had never seen before. She squeezed Binta's hand. "I know, my child." Binta blinked. You know." Mama nodded slowly. "A mother sees more than her children think. I have seen their greed for years. I hoped they would grow out of it. I hoped they would love each other." Her voice trembled slightly. "But I was wrong." Binta felt her heart twist. She had always believed their mother saw the best in everyone. Realizing she had been carrying this pain alone made Binta's chest ache even more. "Mama, I'm so sorry," she whispered. Mama Kasai shook her head. "No, Binta. You are the one person I never worry about. You are not the favorite. You are simply the only one who stayed. The only one who gave without expecting anything." Those words hit Binta harder than any insult her siblings had ever thrown at her. She looked down, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I didn't stay for anything, Mama. I stayed because I love you. And that," Mama said softly, brushing her thumb across Binta's cheek, "is why I made sure you are protected." She reached under her pillow and pulled out a brown, sealed envelope, thick, heavy, stamped with a lawyer's seal. Binta stared at it in confusion. "Mama, what is this?" "A will," Mama said quietly. "Updated months ago. Hidden because I knew your brother and sister would try something like this. I wanted to make sure they could not steal what they did not earn." Binta froze. She never imagined her mother would go this far. Mama placed the envelope in her hands. "Keep it safe. Do not open it yet. Use it only when the time comes, the right moment. You will know when that moment arrives." Binta held the envelope gently, almost afraid to breathe. Mama, thank you. I don't deserve. Mama placed a finger on her lips before she could finish. You deserve peace. You deserve respect. You deserve a life where you are not punished for loving someone. Binta leaned forward and hugged her tightly. Mama Kaysai's arms wrapped around her with surprising strength. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply held onto each other, mother and daughter, both hurt by the same people, both standing together now. As Binta walked out of the room, the envelope pressed against her chest. She felt something she hadn't felt in days. Strength. Whatever her siblings planned next, they had no idea what was waiting for them. The living room felt unusually crowded that afternoon. Relatives filled the sofas, children played on the carpet, and the smell of chai drifted through the air. But underneath all the normal family noise, there was a strange tension, a heaviness that made Binta's stomach twist. Tendo and Samira walked in together, carrying a stack of papers and fake smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Binta recognized that look. It was the same smile they used when they wanted something, when they were pretending to be caring. Everyone, can we have a moment? Tendo announced loudly, as if he were the head of the family. Samira stepped forward, acting all soft and concerned. We just want to make sure Mom is taken care of. You know, legally. She placed her hand dramatically on her chest, like she was about to cry. It made Binta's skin crawl. Mama Kaysai sat in her armchair, wrapped in a warm blanket, looking smaller than usual. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She already knew where this was going. Tendo pulled out the pre-printed papers and placed them on the coffee table. These are just simple documents, he said, pretending to sound casual. Things we need to finalize. For Mom's peace of mind. Peace of mind. That was a lie if Binta had ever heard one. Samira leaned close to their mother, lowering her voice but still loud enough for everyone to hear. Mama, we know you're tired. We know you worry about the future. If you just sign these, everything will be organized. Binta watched from the corner of the room, her heart pounding. She wanted to scream, to call them out, to drag out her recording and expose everything, but Mama's words from the morning echoed in her mind. You will know the right moment. This wasn't it. Not yet. So she stayed silent. She observed. Tendo shuffled the papers, tapping them on the table for attention. Mom, you trust us, right? We're doing this for the family. Family. They used that word like it meant something to them. Samira held a pen out toward Mama Kaysai, practically forcing it into her hand. Just sign here, Mama. It's nothing complicated. But it was complicated, because Binta could see exactly what they were doing, cornering her mother, overwhelming her, using pressure and guilt while everyone watched. It was manipulation disguised as responsibility. Binta's fists tightened at her sides. Her mother looked exhausted, confused, and uncomfortable. She opened her mouth to speak, but Tendo interrupted quickly. Mom, please. We don't want you to stress. Just trust us. Samira nodded eagerly. Yes, Mama. We'll handle everything. Binta doesn't need to worry. She's too sensitive for this kind of thing. Binta felt that sting, but she didn't react. Not yet. Relatives exchanged glances, murmuring quietly. Some looked concerned, some looked uncomfortable, but no one said a word. The pressure in the room felt like it was crushing the air itself. Mama Kaysai looked at the paper, then at her children. Her lips trembled, but she stayed silent. Tendo moved closer, voice growing firmer. Sign it now, Mama. It's for your own good. For your own good. People only said that right before they betrayed you. Binta stepped forward slightly, her eyes sharp, her breath steady. She didn't speak, she simply stood where her mother could see her. Silent reassurance. And Mama Kaysai's trembling stopped. She looked at Binta, then at the papers, then at the two children acting like vultures circling a body that wasn't even gone yet. The moment of truth was approaching fast. And Binta could feel it. The right moment was coming. The moment felt like it was stretching forever. Tendo kept pushing the papers toward their mother. Samira kept pretending to be the concerned daughter, and Mama Kaysai looked trapped between fear and confusion. Binta felt something inside her snap, not in anger but in clarity. This was the moment. The moment her mother had prepared her for. The moment she herself had been holding back from. She stepped forward, her voice steady but sharp enough to cut through the noise. "I heard everything you said last night." The room froze instantly. Ants stopped whispering. Children stopped playing. Every pair of eyes turned to Binta. Tendo stiffened. "What are you talking about?" he said too quickly, fake calm already cracking. Samira whipped around, her face turning red. "You're lying. You always twist things." She sounded panicked, not angry. Binta didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout. She simply reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. "I heard every word," she said quietly. "And I recorded it." Gasps spread across the room like a wave. Someone muttered, "Recorded." Someone else whispered, "God have mercy." Samira's eyes widened. "You what?" Her voice cracked. "You can't do that. Delete it." Tendo stepped forward, trying to grab the phone, but Binta moved back smoothly, her expression calmer than she felt. "No," she said firmly. "Everyone here deserves to hear the truth." He tapped play. And suddenly the living room filled with the voices that had haunted her all night. "Tendo, we need to change the papers. Mom won't notice. She's too weak." "Samira, make sure Binta gets nothing. She thinks helping Mom makes her special." "Tendo, we will push Mom to sign everything tonight. Before she dies." The words echoed through the room like poison spilled into the air. Aunt Fatma covered her mouth in shock. Uncle Liko shook his head slowly, disbelief painted across his face. The younger cousins stared between the siblings like they were watching a crime unfold. Tendo's face turned pale, then red. "This is taken out of context," he shouted. Samira started crying loudly, dramatic tears that fooled no one. "You're ruining the family. You always want attention." But no one moved toward them. No one tried to comfort them. They were exposed. Fully, brutally, undeniably. Mama Kaysai's hands trembled as she clutched the armrest of her chair. She looked at her other children with heartbreak deeper than any wound. You would do this to me," she whispered. The shame in the room was suffocating, but not for Binta. For once, she felt the weight lifting from her chest. The truth, the same truth they tried to bury, was now out in the open, burning through every lie her siblings had built. Samira pointed at Binta desperately. "You're doing this because you want the inheritance." Binta shook her head. "No. I'm doing this because you were trying to steal from our mother while she is still alive. I'm doing this because you thought you could hurt her and walk away without consequences." Her voice didn't tremble. Her eyes didn't waver. Tendo looked around the room and realized something horrifying. No one was on their side. Not anymore. Their greed had thrown them into a pit they dug themselves. And now everyone could see exactly who they truly were. The explosion had happened, and there was no turning back. Mama Kaysai took a deep breath and slowly rose from her chair, the room still buzzing with tension and whispers. Her hands shook slightly as she reached into her shawl and pulled out the sealed envelope she had entrusted to Binta. The paper felt heavy in Binta's hands, as if it carried the weight of every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every tear she had shed for her mother. "This is for you," Mama Kaysai said softly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "The right moment has come." Binta's hands trembled as she broke the seal. She unfolded the documents carefully, feeling the crisp paper beneath her fingers. The official stamps of Nairobi lawyers glimmered in the sunlight streaming through the windows. Every word she read made her heart pound faster, and slowly, disbelief gave way to quiet triumph. 70%. 70% of everything, the farms, the properties, the bank accounts, the land titles. All of it was hers. Not because she demanded it. Not because she begged. But because she had stayed. Because she had loved. She looked up and saw Tendo's jaw drop, his face pale as the reality sank in. Samira's hands flew to her mouth, eyes wide with horror. The rest of the estate was divided into small portions for them, pieces too small to matter on their own. And the final blow. None of them could sell, transfer, or manage any property without Binta's approval. Every attempt at control, every plan at greed, had been blocked before it even began. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then came the first sounds of panic. Tendo stumbled backward, almost knocking over a chair. This isn't fair," he shouted, his voice trembling. Samira's knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, shaking. "Mama, this is wrong. It has to be changed." Binta stayed calm, letting the shock of their faces settle into the room like a heavy curtain. She didn't yell. She didn't need to. The will spoke louder than any argument, louder than any protest. It was clear. It was final. Aunts and uncles murmured quietly among themselves, exchanging glances filled with astonishment and respect. Even cousins who had been silent the entire time looked at Binta differently. She was no longer just Mom's favorite. She was the one who had been right, the one who had stood by Mama Kesai when no one else would. Binta folded the will carefully and tucked it close to her chest. Her mother's hand rested on her shoulder, steadying her. "You've earned this," Mama whispered. Tendo and Samira scrambled to make sense of what had just happened, their panic growing with every passing second. They realized too late that their greed had blinded them, that their plotting had been futile against a mother who knew the truth and a daughter who had the courage to protect her. Binta finally let herself breathe. The fear, the anger, the heartache, all of it was still there, but beneath it now burned a quiet, unshakable power. She had won. Not through violence, not through threats, but through patience, love, and truth. And everyone in the room knew it. Tendo and Samira were a mess. Their faces were pale, their voices shaky, and their hands trembled as they tried desperately to make sense of what had just happened. Tendo dropped to his knees, clutching at Mama Kesai's chair. "Please, Mama. Please. We didn't mean, this isn't fair." His voice cracked with fear and frustration. Samira collapsed onto the couch, sobbing loudly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Binta, this isn't right. You can't take it all. We'll beg, we'll do anything." She held out her hands as if pleading could undo months of scheming, as if crying could erase the greed that had defined her actions. But no one was moved. Aunt Fatma shook her head slowly, her eyes filled with disappointment. "Enough. The truth is clear." Uncle Liko folded his arms, staring at them with cold disbelief. Cousins and other family members murmured among themselves, shaking their heads at the siblings' desperation. "All this greed," one cousin whispered, "and they've destroyed their own future." Binta watched quietly from across the room. She didn't yell, she didn't argue, she didn't beg for respect. She just watched as their panic and desperation made them look smaller than they ever had in her eyes. Their crying and threats sounded hollow, empty. The world was no longer on their side. Finally, Binta took a slow step forward, her voice calm but firm, carrying the weight of every late night, every sacrifice, every tear she had shed for their mother. "You called me favorite like it was an insult," she said, her eyes locking onto Tendo and Samira. "Like it was something to mock, to hurt me with." She paused, letting the words sink in, letting the room feel the weight of truth. "But I was the only one who actually loved her," she continued. "I stayed when you left, cared when you ignored. I sacrificed when you did nothing. And that's why she trusts me. That's why she chose me. Not because I'm perfect, but because love isn't about taking, it's about giving. Something you clearly don't understand." Tendo opened his mouth, probably to argue, but no words came out. Samira's sobs slowed as she realized the walls of support had turned against them. Their attempts at manipulation, their plans, their lies. All of it had collapsed. The family had seen the truth. Greed had been exposed, and the cost was clear. Tendo and Samira had lost not just inheritance, but respect, trust, and dignity. Binta turned to Mama Kesai, who gave her a small, proud nod. For the first time that weekend, Binta felt the weight lift off her shoulders. She had done more than protect herself. She had protected the woman she loved most, and she had done it with grace and strength. The siblings begging, crying, and threats faded into the background. Binta remained standing, calm, composed, and unstoppable, the quiet force of love that had already won the battle. Months later, life in Macon Valley had changed, but for Binta, it had finally found a sense of peace and purpose. She walked through the fields of their family farms, sunlight warming her face, listening to the soft rustle of crops swaying in the breeze. She had taken over the management of the farms herself, overseeing every detail with care and pride. What used to feel like responsibility now felt like a gift, a way to honor her mother and the years she had sacrificed. In the mornings, Binta visited Mama Kaysai, helping her with meals, making sure she took her medicine, and sharing quiet moments on the porch where they would watch the sun rise together. Her mother was healthier now, happier too, and Binta felt a deep sense of fulfillment in being the one her mother could truly rely on. But Binta didn't stop there. She had always dreamed of helping others, and now she finally had the chance. With a small portion of the estate, she opened a wellness center in the valley, a place for people to heal, relax, and find balance. It wasn't about money, it was about giving back, about creating a legacy that went beyond property and wealth. As for Tendo and Samira, they were nowhere to be seen. They hadn't reached out, they hadn't tried. Their greed had pushed them away from the family entirely. Binta didn't feel anger anymore, only a quiet satisfaction that the truth had protected her, and that love had shielded her mother from harm. One evening, after locking up the wellness center, Binta sat at her desk and opened her laptop. She wrote a post that she had wanted to share for a long time. They mocked me for being the favorite. They didn't know love becomes the strongest inheritance of all. She posted it and leaned back, watching as comments flooded in. People praised her strength, shared their own stories of betrayal and perseverance, and celebrated the victory of love and patience over greed. Binta smiled softly. The valley felt alive in a new way, not just with the crops and the animals, but with hope, trust, and a sense of family that wasn't defined by selfishness. She had lost nothing that mattered. She had gained everything: her mother's trust, her own strength, and the knowledge that true love always outlasts hate and greed. For the first time in a long time, Binta felt completely free.